First tonight, a federal appeals court has temporarily reinstated President Trump's sweeping tariffs, his taxes on foreign imports into the US. It comes just a day after a lower court ruled that he'd overstepped his powers by imposing the duties. President Trump has called the earlier lower court ruling political and horrible. His tariffs have stirred significant controversy and legal battles and had a big impact on businesses both in the US and around the world.
President Trump is delivering on his promise to fix this problem, and he has taken a long overdue and much needed bold stance for American workers after decades of our manufacturing base being hollowed out. The president's rationale for imposing these powerful tariffs was legally sound and grounded in common sense. President Trump correctly believes that America cannot function safely long-term if we are unable to scale advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, have our own secure critical supply chains, and our defense industrial base is dependent on foreign adversaries. Three judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him.
Look, the tariffs remain in place. The court told us, they didn't all but tell us, they told us, go do it another way. So you can assume that even if we lose, we will do it another way. And I can assure the American people that the Trump tariff agenda is alive, well, healthy, and will be implemented to protect you, to save your jobs and your factories, and to stop shipping foreign wealth, our wealth, into foreign hands.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line by the independent economist and economics fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs in London, Julian Jessop. Mr. Jessop, thank you very much indeed for joining us. What's been the reaction in your assessment, I suppose, around the globe and possibly in America for this latest back and forth in the courts with President Trump's tariffs?
Well, I think the markets are bemused what to make of this. It's another example of Trump's tariff strategy running up against reality. So in the last few weeks, we've seen sort of economic reality bite, with businesses saying that these tariffs will push up prices and damage the US economy. We've seen consumers worried actually that they will impact on jobs and drive prices up as well. We've had in markets worried, so investors are concerned about what this means for the US economy and for the dollar. And now we've got legal problems. It'd always been obvious from the start that what Trump is proposing is inconsistent with international rules on trade. But now a US court has decided that it's inconsistent with his own powers according to the US Constitution as well. So it's more uncertainty. It's clear, though, he's going to plough ahead with these tariffs one way or the other regardless, whether that's through appealing this judgment all the way to the Supreme Court, where he might well win, or finding other ways to impose the tariffs using the usual routes or going through Congress. But in the meantime, the only certainty is more uncertainty, and that's bad for business confidence, for markets, and ultimately for consumers as well.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because as you correctly pointed out, the uncertainty continues. I mean, I wonder how difficult it's been for affected business owners to create a business plan.
Well, it's almost impossible if you don't know what the tariff regime is going to be for your business over the coming years. And by tariffs, of course, I really mean taxes, because that's what these tariffs effectively are. And it's not just about tariffs either. It's various other controls that are potentially being put in place that could affect trade between the US and the rest of the world. In addition, of course, to the sort of direct impact through what the US is doing, there are question marks about how other countries might retaliate. At the moment, other countries haven't retaliated apart from China. But the European Union, amongst others, has threatened to do so. So this could be a war that escalates before it gets any better.
And, I mean, do these businesses have a way of making their voices and complaints heard to the Trump administration, or is there a sense that no one cares or no one's listening?
Well, the government, or the US government, does have to listen to businesses, and a prime example of that is the tech sector in the US. So the manufacturers of iPhone have pointed out that if the tariffs were imposed in full, then iPhones become significantly more expensive. Other businesses, including Amazon, have threatened or already started to include the increased costs that are due to tariffs in the prices that consumers are paying. So the implications of this for US prices are becoming very visible, and that's impossible, I think, for Trump to ignore. I think his only defense, and it's not a completely daft one, is to say that these tariffs are simply a bargaining tool to get other countries to come to the negotiating table. And in the long run, he does intend to reduce these tariffs to more sensible and sustainable levels. So this might be just part of the art of the deal, as he would put it. But my sense is that he's just responding to events, and businesses, markets, and now the lawyers are saying, no, you can't do this.
But of course, the art of that deal is already having some impact, as you pointed out. I mean, and it's already affecting businesses, isn't it?
Well, again, to be clear, I'm no fan of what Trump is doing, but in a sense, he does have a point that lots of other countries have been maintaining artificial trade barriers against the US, not just tariffs, but various other things they're doing, like, standards that are far higher than they need to be, or manipulating their currencies. So there is a sort of underlying logic to his strategy, but ultimately his threats are not credible, because people know that they're damaging the US economy potentially just as much as they're damaging countries elsewhere. Businesses are pushing back against them. His popularity ratings are falling. Consumer confidence in the US is now a lot softer. So I think he's making these threats, but ultimately they're not credible. And so you're not really going to come out as a winner from that sort of strategy.
And of course, you are a respected economics fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs in London, which in itself is a well-respected think tank. I mean, does anybody there, does anyone anywhere have any idea what these things are going to look like in 6 months or a year? Or are they simply making plans and backup plans for the backup plan, if you like?
Well, I think you have to take Trump at face value. And when he says that he loves tariffs and that he thinks they're a solution to the US economic problems, I think we will end up with higher US tariffs in 6 to 12 months' time than we had before he was elected. Probably, nowhere near as high as they are now. I think he will have to continue to back down and lower those tariffs. But he does like tariffs, rightly or wrongly. He thinks that trade deficits are a big problem for the US, and that tariffs are a good way also of raising money. So I think we will end up with higher tariffs imposed by the US. Interestingly, though, we might end up with lower tariffs imposed by other countries. So we've already seen the UK do a sort of partial trade deal with the US, where in return for lower tariffs on things like cars and steel, we've lowered some of our tariffs and other trade barriers on imports from the US. And as somebody who works with a free market economics think tank, I think anything that lowers barriers to trade is a win-win for both sides. So I think that's good for US producers, but it also is good for UK consumers, who can benefit from more choice and lower prices than they would otherwise have done.
Mr. Jessop, I want to thank you very much indeed. Julian Jessop is an independent economist and economics fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs in London. Thank you very much indeed.